Welcome to the LFiles. My name is Director Kneidl and I will be monitoring your activity during our broadcast. Joining us from an undisclosed location is Special Agent Degener, who will be sharing classified information with you today. Good afternoon, Special Agent Degener.
Good afternoon, Director Kneidl.
Before I hand over control to Special Agent Degener, I have some classified information for all of you. First, your headsets have been deactivated for security reasons. If you feel the urge to communicate with us, please submit your questions via the GoToWebinar application. We will monitor your communication and act accordingly. Second, we will have a Q&A session at the end of our broadcast to make sure all your questions are being answered truthfully. Third, this broadcast is being recorded. The recording can be subject of a detailed analysis at a later date. Instructions about this process will be mailed to you within a 24-hour period. I now hand over full control to our presenter, Special Agent Degener. Special Agent Degener, please take over.
Thank you again, Director Kneidl. So, what do we have today? We will inspect what exactly log files are, the undeniable source of information. Then we will take a look at some real-world examples taken from real log files of real programs. And then we will find out how LogNG, the mighty StableNet log file parsing script, can be used to tackle those log file challenges. At the end, we will have the already mentioned question and answer session. So, what exactly are log files? Actually, a log file is an application protocol containing crucial process information, like, for example, audit information or error traces. Furthermore, they are often the only way to reveal process history. So you can use historic data sometimes to make assumptions about upcoming problems, and maybe they can be used to prevent certain failures in the future. But there are challenges because log files are usually they usually contain lots of uninteresting data, and finding the really important data is like the needle in a haystack problem. Furthermore, log files often contain sensitive data like usernames or even passwords, and they therefore underlie access restrictions, and often also tunneling is necessary to even access them. Due to their size, which can be up to several gigabytes, it's also not a completely easy task to analyze them, because you need some strategies if you analyze files with several gigabytes, like the strategy that you remember the last position that you have been when you start the process all over again. But what exactly is a log? Traditionally, they are text files, but must a log always be a file? What about the Linux disk-free command, delivering interesting information that are also worth analyzing? Also on Windows, for example, you can have the WMIC command to get an overview about the services running on your system. And combined with a blacklist, you might identify mysterious services running on your machine and take action to remove them. But there's more. There exists no standard for log files, so that every log file of different programs is usually different. There are single-line versus multi-line entries, and there are error codes versus plain text. The error codes are always some kind of a mysterious thing, because without a respective handbook translating them, you cannot really make use of them because you do not know what's going on. Furthermore, they can also encode different severities, so that not every error that you find must be a critical one. So there might be minor ones or even errors that you can just ignore. sometimes there's also the need for symptom correlation, because there's not always a keyword or similar. Sometimes different things have to occur to become relevant. This is the case, for example, when you have database delays followed by transaction rollbacks. And furthermore, in some cases, it's not even an easy task to specify relevant log files, because the names can change if, for example, the current date is encoded in the file name, or you might have multiple log files scattered in different folders. You could also have some pre-processing commands that you might need to execute because they may create the log that you want to analyze, or because they prepare the log file. And this might be legacy scripts that you might want to execute before analyzing the logs. So you have to consider this as well. So those have been challenges that you might stumble upon when doing log file analysis. But let's now have a look at how such challenges appear in real-world logs. So this is the first example. Okay, it is not completely real. The real log file was tweaked a little bit to give an easy start. So what could we want to do with this log file? We could maybe search for certain keywords like error or truth. So as you can see, they appear 6 times in total. Another example is the demystification of those cryptic error codes. In this log file taken from an Oracle database, you have, for example, these error codes. But what will you do with them if you do not have the respective handbook? It's not completely comprehensible what's going on. So it would be nice if those errors could be translated in a respective alarm message to be really useful for the network operation center. The last example is about structured logs. In this case, you have error codes again, like this 12535 error code, but this might not be an error because there might be the need for this error code to appear in the respective subsection. So only if this error code appears in the main error code line in the subsection of 12535, there might be an error, for example. In the green error code below might not be an error at all, so you cannot rely on standard keyword matching. So the context is different, and the context is important. So now that we know about our goals, let's take a look at the tool that will make you achieve them. LogNG. But what does this LogNG mean? People like to refer to it as log nightmares gone, log never-ending glory, but actually its name is log next generation, for next generation log file parsing. And you might think that there's a big API because of all the challenges that you need to tackle. But as you know, size does not always matter. So you only have to specify the log location, and you have to specify the rules that will be applied on the output. A log location can be a single file or multiple files, or the output of a command. Furthermore, you can specify if this should be on your local machine or tunneled over SSH. For example, on a Windows machine, you might want to specify the cwindows windows update.log file using this URL log location specification. But you might also want to use the disk-free command on the fbi.com host with user Fox. And once you have this log output, you can apply rules to them. Rules are actually a file encapsulating logic. This file can be a simple list of error patterns, but you can also use it to specify mighty functionality in order to tackle advanced use cases as seen before in the structured log example. So let's now haunt our examples with LogNG. I hope you remember the first example from some minutes ago. We want to match the keywords error and truth. Specifying the log location should be evident, that's why I will omit it. What's more interesting are those rules that I just talked about. So that's how a simple rule file looks. You have a pattern column and a message column. The pattern specifies regular expressions, can be an easy one like just plain text error, but you can also use, for example, the capture groups of regular expressions. This becomes important when specifying the message. In the first case, you just add found an error to the output if the error pattern matches. In the second case, you grab the first capture group of the pattern and add it to the output. So the one in curly braces basically will be replaced by truth. So what do you get as a result? Found an error, truth is inside, found an error, truth is inside. So very straightforward. So let's move on to the next example. You remember those cryptic error codes? I looked them up for you, and here you go. So this is the translation from the respective Oracle handbook. And it would be nice to use these information in the respective error message. So how can you achieve that? Like this. You will notice the pattern column again and the message column. This time I also specified a severity column. So you can specify different severities for different patterns, which means the Oracle 1109 pattern might be a really critical one, whereas the Oracle 00312 might be only a minor issue. When you take a look at the pattern, it's a little different before. We have this dot plus syntax, especially just, this just means that everything will be matched until a colon appears, and everything that follows will be captured in this capture group. The other entries are pretty similar. When you take a look at the message, you see that it contains the translation from the Oracle handbook, and I also used some variables. You will remember the curly braces from before, and I also used the line variable so that you this will be replaced by the line where the pattern matched, so that you have information where the error occurred that you found. The other lines are pretty similar, so the output that you get will be like this. So if you take a look at this output, it comes from the topmost line. You see it happened in line 3. Then you have this error text from the handbook, and alter database close normal is captured by those curly braces, and especially this capture group here. The other lines are similar, so I will not elaborate further on them. Okay, I think we are all ready now to take a look at example 3, the structured log. So actually, before we tackle a log file issue, we always have to ask ourselves, what exactly do we want? We want an error if the main error code TNS 505 is in a TNS 12535 log section, like here in the red. So how can we achieve that? Actually, we have to check if the line starts with TNS 12535. Then we will step into the subsection and check for main and TNS 505 until we find it. If we found it, we have a match, and we will add it to the results and restart the whole process all over again. But if there's a line starting with TNS, then we found a new block, and we can restart the process all over again. In LogNG, it's like this. So What do we want? We will check if the line starts with TNS 12535. But before I elaborate on that, I will introduce these two new columns, label and set label. Actually, the label column allows you to define a specific label for a log file line, for a rule line, I mean, and the set label is basically a go-to. But I hope you should see in the following. So if we found a line starting with TNS 12535, we will jump to the subcheck label, which basically means we will step into the subsection. Then, when we are in the subsection, we will check for this main error code. If we did not find the TNS 12535, then this pattern will match. It's basically an else condition, and we will restart this process all over again. If we found this main error code, then we will add the message to the output because we found an error. Severity is critical in this case. If we did not find, and we will restart the whole process all over again. If we did not find such an entry, then it must either be starting with a line starting with TNS, then we have a new block and we will restart the process all over again, or we found something different and we will keep searching for our main error code. And in the end, there's only one result, and it looks like this. At line 4, we found the error code TNS 505. And now, this was not now the features for real special agents, because that was not all that LogNG is capable of. You can, for example, define your own variables. You can use them to gather information in strings, for example. You can count occurrences, you can calculate values or thresholds, and you can, of course, use them in your alarm message. When you use, for example, your own variables, I mean, you can also define conditions. And with your own variables and conditions, you can specify complex logic with conditional jumps. And of course, you cannot, you can combine your own variables with the provided ones. How does it look like? Actually, it's only two more columns in your rules file, and off you go. But that's beyond the scope of this webinar. So what can you do with it, for example? If you have a log file like this, where you have some kind of a structure again, and every cluster represents one big entry, you can grab out all the context information, like the size or the process name, and use it in your log file, in your alarm message in the end. You can also use variables, the variable arithmetic feature to, for example, normalize values. In this case, you have time 10 and time 10, basically the same, but you have a different time base. So this means 10 minutes, the lower means 10 seconds. But you might only want to raise an alarm if you have like 8 minutes. And so you could use the you could use the calculation feature to first normalize the 10 seconds to minutes, for example, and then continue in your logic. And in the end, if you have set up everything, you can of course use the output with StableNet's mighty reporting functionalities. And I want to show this to you on a live demo system. I've set up all the examples in a respective StableNet, and as you can see, we have those alarms that you've already seen in the presentation. So, example 1. We take a closer look, found an error, truth is inside. I think you will remember. So if you have those alarms at hand, you can create a report on them. I've prepared this for you. And it must not always be the standard StableNet report. You can also use an own HTML template, the LFiles template in this case. So how could this basically look like? You will see in a few seconds. Just that you can see the structure of the report. It's just example 1, 2, 3, and the respective chart for that. And then I can take a look at the dashboard for it, and off you go. You can see the example 1, example 2, and example 3. You should remember all of those log file output lines, and you can really spice it up with custom templates. But the most important thing that you should have noticed, we proved that the truth is inside. Okay, so let's come to our question and answer session.
All right, Special Agent Degener, very interesting, very interesting. In the meantime, I have started to upload the PDF version of the slides we've been using today, so you're going to see them in a couple of seconds in the download section, so please help yourself and download those slides in case you're interested. We have received lots of communication, some of it interesting, some of it confidential. I've picked out a couple of questions that were probably clear to everybody, so we're going to discuss them in the Q&A. The first question is talking about LogNG, of course. Is the question, is this, it's a business process script, in case you didn't mention that, I was not sure if you did. Is this business process script available? Because it's quite obviously not in the official version of StableNet. If yes, how much does it cost? Where can I get it? So these are the type of questions that were coming from our audience. Could you elaborate on that?
Of course. First, is it a business process script? Yes, it is. And what I could do is to just show you how the API looks like in StableNet. So it's the SN script, LogNG script, and what I've done here is I specified the rules with using a CSV file. CSV file can be edited with Excel, for example, like here. So you do not have to use a plain text editor for that. And I specified the log file. So that's how it looks like in StableNet, just for you to know. And let's modify this one as well. Yeah, pretty straightforward. It is not in a standard repository of us, but customers and partners are very invited to contact us about it, and we will provide you the script without any further charge.
Thank you very much, Agent Degener. I'm just going to type an email address in the chat. If you send us a little email, we'll check on your security clearance, and if everything checks out, we can send you the business process script. So if you're interested, just let us know. There was another question, actually a number of questions. I'm just trying to condense the information a bit, talking about or asking about how does LogNG differentiate from other solutions like Splunk, for instance. Would you be able to share some information about that?
Okay, first of all, As I just said, it's free, and it works very well with our StableNet infrastructure. So if you have an already existing StableNet server infrastructure, you do not have to build up a new one like in Splunk. That is a completely new system. Yeah, that's one of the main differences. Yes, actually.
All right, there's probably more to it, but we can't reveal everything in here. I mean, I'm sorry, it's not possible. So it's free, no government funds were used to build this business process script, very interesting. There's another question about the capabilities from LogNG. Is there a size limitation for log files that LogNG can handle?
Basically, there's no size limitation because LogNG uses a stream-based approach, so your memory consumption won't explode. Furthermore, it remembers the position it was if you want that. If you have to analyze a log that has several gigabytes, it doesn't take for ages to analyze it over and over again. So all good with big logs.
Is that the long version of no? There is no size limitation, just to make sure that we're understanding everything correctly here. Okay.
Correct.
Just nod, that's fine. And there is, obviously we have a couple of attendees with higher security clearance, so there is people in this audience that do have LogNG in action. Can't reveal who it is, but there are people who use that. The question coming from this part of our audience is the LogNG version 2 the most current one?
LogNG version 2?
Yes, that's what is
it? We can check this. Give me a second.
Make sure there's no security breaches.
As you can see, it's version 2, and that's the most current one.
All right. Now there's.
But in the near future, we will have a short update an update on the LogNG, just for you to know.
Well, it seems that our audience member has suspected that you're going to answer like that. And that's where the second part of the question is interesting. Is there a process to get updates on those non-standard scripts in case there are any updates? Do we have a process in place?
We do not have a standard process in place for that, for those kind of scripts, because they're actually they are optional and most of the time part of some projects. So from a project's perspective, you will receive updates if there is if there's the need. You can always tell us if that you want to have updates about the LogNG, for example, then we can provide them to you.
It is a matter of security clearance. I mean, that's for sure. Yes. Okay. So the answer to that then obviously is you need to communicate with us, and then we can see what we can do. All right. Well, thank you, Special Agent Degener, for sharing this information with us. There's, of course, more web sessions on other StableNet-related topics available. If you still have questions, then please, talk to us. We're happy to help. And we have a lot more resources on various topics in the resource section of our website. This one is open for the public, so feel free to dive in there and help yourself. Well, again, thank you, Special Agent Degener, and I would also like to thank everyone for their cooperation during today's broadcast. You will receive instructions on how to access a recording of this broadcast within 24 hours. We're going to keep this transmission open for a few more minutes just in case anyone from our audience decides to send us another question. Don't worry, we'll monitor all communication and act accordingly. Well, I guess that's all from us today. Special Agent Degener, any comments from your department?
No.
Well, I guess that cleared that up. Be advised, our next transmission will be on September 29th this year. And that'll be all. Thank you for your cooperation. Goodbye.